Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Covenant Cast. I'm Zach.
And I'm Steven.
And I'm Jonathan.
And today we're answering the question, should you play L5R? All right, well, what have you guys been up to this week?
Did you look over at me? You looked over at me. All right, here I
First,
am.
right here, right.
We're on camera again.
Oh, yeah, I can. Hi, everyone.
Hello there.
Out there in
Didn't
TV
see you come
land.
in.
It's a special camera edition.
Yeah, so this week,
you're
basically more house stuff. 2 steps forward, potentially 500,000 steps back.
Wait, did the land disappear?
Well, the land, yes,
Sucked into the earth.
in
The
some
ongoing
ways,
John land
in
saga.
some ways it did, as we have found out that there's a chance that the seller doesn't actually own the land.
Great.
So we got to go through that process now.
Well, you can't sell anything you don't own, right?
Right, yeah, but I mean, they had it listed, so.
Unless you're really good.
That's a pretty good scam there.
Yeah.
I'll just list this
You would
land.
think that, I mean, I'm no real estate expert, but I would think before you sell something, you would like to verify ownership.
Is this one of those weird, like, my
Yes.
grandpa's grandpa owned
Yeah,
this land,
that's
and
exactly
then we
right.
haven't really ever questioned it.
Right.
It just kind of passed down.
We
and
never
then-
questioned it. We never built anything on it. We never needed permits for it. We just ran some cattle on it and called it a day.
And, for the people listening that live in, like, big cities and
Mm-hmm.
aren't familiar, there is that much land in the universe.
yeah, there is.
There's a lot of land, but I'll tell you one thing: there's not going to be more of it.
It's the one thing they're not making anymore.
get it
Except
now.
for over in Pakistan, or there was off the coast somewhere.
I
There
was
was a
going to say,
volcano.
I
Maybe
don't
they can
believe
have
that
a little
more
bit.
land can't be made.
Yeah,
That's true.
that's true.
We're
it's
making
a
a
lot
giant
harder.
plastic island as we speak.
There
so
it is. Easy
we
peasy.
live on that. Pretty
Welcome
soon.
to Earth.
So then, not
Welcome
only
to
that,
Earth.
so there was that, but then we had a nice play volleyball on Saturday.
We did.
Fantastic.
Nothing like it.
Went over to Steven's house, hung out a little bit after that. On Sunday, just went to church and went to brunch and just had a grand old time. Really, the summer has broken.
The Unitarian Church.
That's right.
Just so that everybody.
Man, we are really going to go
You know,
places
summer-
here today.
It's
Summer
an
has-
awesome church.
Yeah, they're very service based, and we can get into all sorts of theology and where I am on all that.
We're not
but
going
won't.
to.
It's the biggest one in the world,
But
right?
I will say
Unitarian
that
Church?
their emphasis on service is very appealing to me. So like I said, summer has broken. I'm very much in the sort of allegory of the ant and the grasshopper. I'm very much on the ant side of things, where you just destroy yourself in the summer and then relax in the winter. And so I have been destroying myself in the summer, and with this change in weather, something always kicks off in my head, and it just seems a little more relaxed.
Maybe
and
that's
been very nice.
A week
nice.
or two ago, you were like, I was feeling like you were at that point, and I didn't understand it. I didn't have an allegory for it
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
And then even now, it's like, I was going to ask because you were mentioning needing a break. And I feel like you got the break.
Yes, yeah. This weekend very much was the break. I slept in my own bed every night.
Congratulations.
Which is great. It hasn't happened in a long time for a weekend.
It's kind of a confusing line for a lot of people listening. Wait,
Well,
that's
usually-
that not normal?
Well, so
He's kind of got a gypsy soul.
we went camping, went camping last weekend, for instance, at my mother-in-law's house the weekend before, that sort of thing. So I can see where that can be misinterpreted, but yes, it's certainly it's very nice to be.
Slept in my own bed?
I
in my
almost
own
lost
bed.
it right
In my own
there.
bed.
I really
And
did.
Gen Con, I mean, it's been nice.
It's
Now-
been on.
now
and
it's fall.
You were a little bit ill there for a while too,
Yeah.
as I was
I was a
and
little
Zach
bit ill.
was
Yeah,
too.
we
I
all
was
had a
pre-Gen
big-
Con.
Yeah, the big
pre-Gen
ragweed
Con
thing came in and just destroyed everybody, and then Gen Con double destroyed.
Allergies are real.
Yeah. So it's been tough, but the summer has broken. Things have just sort of calmed down. It's very nice. So
It feels awesome.
it feels awesome now. Yeah, that was my week.
What about you?
Hey,
Hey.
everything. Obviously everything Jonathan said. We did volleyball, which is the greatest both sport and workout and experience that there is in terms of physical activity.
You heard it here.
Making a
It's
lot
all
of
the other
sports
sports
can
can
go
go
broad
it's the-
statements.
it is the pinnacle.
Well, is it partly
experience.
because I feel like volleyball, and not to take over your topic here, I feel like volleyball has a really strong social element.
There is a social
It
element.
allows. It's sort of
Yeah.
like a game that allows for the social
right?
because of the number of breaks. Not like
It's a purely collaborative effort, without a doubt. So you play baseball, you're still the person at bat and
Yeah.
failing or succeeding. You play basketball, you're still taking the shot. And there's some of that. It's actually more like basketball than anything else.
yeah.
But you have to. Everybody's got to be doing their job
Yeah, you
simultaneously.
yeah.
And it even goes beyond. It goes well beyond just you've got to be able. Let's say we're doing 3 hits. You got to be able to bump, set, and spike. But you've also got to be able to adjust your position based on people being out of position because they go up for a block. You have to have field awareness to know where to go. And it's just it's the freedom of it, I think. So I'm obsessed with freedom just generally, but you can do anything in that sand pit. Not
anything. Talk about
a bit of a libertarian bent on that, but yeah, you could.
Brought my hammer.
easy clean up.
You could raise a family, some illicit drugs. You could do anything.
I brought the katana.
No, you can dive, right? You can jump, you can dive, you can fall on your back, you can do anything you want, and it's not going to hurt as compared to a lot of other.
It's one of the softest terrestrial.
Right.
Yeah, like
surfaces.
in basketball, you don't want
to do
necessarily
that.
hit the ground.
Nor an indoor, do you?
So it allows very epic moments in the game where people can, of their own volition, choose to do something spectacular. And if it works, it's amazing, right? So it's really cool to have that experience. But more importantly, we got a new Netrunner.
Yes.
We've got some magic happening.
They announced 2.0 Core kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, Core 2.0. Now, this is tremendous. It's there's a lot of emotions involved in that, right? Because you weren't. I wasn't expecting. I thought after we didn't get anything at Gen Con. It's like, well, next year maybe we'll get something, and they'll see how rotation goes.
Or maybe they'll announce something at Worlds.
And this course has been rumored for about 7 to 8 years at this point. I think once the first core hit, they
You ever think they'll redo that one?
We're doing a redo. Yeah. So the important thing about this core set is it's a template for what could be done for future games like L5R. So I think that's relevant to the podcast, that FFG is exploring how to get off of the precipice of failure. And because Netrunner was there, as are a number of other games. So this is a kind of a model of what might be done. I think some of the things that were done exceedingly well is it's a very FFG decision. They take a lot of heat for a lot of reasons, and say what you will about that, whether it's the way they construct their core sets or handle their organized play or whatever. But there are some things that FFG does exceedingly well, and that is very creative ideas and approaches to the content itself. So a simple thing like having reintroduced Gabe and Chaos Theory as aged characters
very cool.
Is simply, to me, it is the first time that really it feels like the true living card game idea, right?
Yeah.
You're actually seeing personalities and things in the game live as you are experiencing them in the game. And so you see them get older, you see things change, you see potentially, Wizard dying in a boom card.
Yeah, I like that.
So now we see like a story that is actually alive and happening. So living. So this is really great. The most important part about all of this is what if I told you, okay? I didn't say anything about a core set 2.0. We're just going to do standard rotation. The game is unchanged. However, the following cards will never be allowed in tournament play, right? What if I said this to you?
All right,
you can no longer use Noise, Kate, Engineering the Future, AstroScript Pilot Program, Breaking News, Santan City Grid, Scorched Earth, Corroder, Medium, Parasite, Yogg, Wildside, Account Siphon, Desperado.
I would say... I would say that Netrunner just got a lot more interesting.
1,000 times more interesting, right?
You have these like fundamentally, mathematically great cards.
Impossible to do better.
It's really, it's like you can do things that are more interesting, but never more efficient. And in a game about efficiency,
that's
right?
Very true.
You're just going to choose the efficient option. So
I mean, you lost Corroder, Yogg, and Parasite.
It's a whole new world.
Like the game is.
I mean, that's basically the Anatomy of Anarchy is just.
It's gone.
And a Account Siphon.
Good for it too. I mean, it shouldn't be. But you got AstroScript and Breaking News. Losing Breaking News just entirely different game.
And
losing
Scorched
Earth,
yeah.
Entirely different game. And a lot of these changes, what they're doing to me, like just right out of the bag, NBN has always been about tagging, right? But it's never really mattered terribly much because AstroScript is always there as the backup.
Yeah, it's
plan.
about scoring fast.
But now the cards that remain, and I haven't been in Netrunner for a while, so I may be telling tales out of school here, but it's about actually stacking up tags. It's not about getting a tag and then, whoa, the game's over, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's the NBN is literally just oppressing you with, oh no, I'm 3 tags in, 4 tags in, 8 tags in. And then the cards that are working on that now, like the booms and those kinds of things, are, available. So, but taking out breaking news and that instant ability to just land 2 tags on somebody with that dumb card that does that, I can't remember what it is. Like you immediately do an agenda thing. That not being around is so significant for me enjoying this game again. I can't even describe it. And like not having this list is incredible. This is like the list of Netrunner that you've seen for the past 2.5 years.
And I won't be surprised if there's heat taken, because these are also some of the more potent, powerful known cards. But when you have a game like Netrunner, I think that's kind of where it was at. And maybe we'll do a whole episode on this, on Netrunner and reboots and that kind of thing.
We really should.
Definitely should.
But the reality of it had to have a shakeup.
Yeah.
Like the number one thing that it needed was a ground-shaking, fundamental shift in the way this game is viewed. Because I know that I get the feeling with Netrunner, it is one of those games that, regardless of it stopping being made today, would be being played in 20 years. And it's the kind of game that once you're a Netrunner player, you're always a Netrunner player.
Very similar to L5R.
And so I'm hopeful that this is enough of a shake.
It's got, see, the thing is, Netrunner has the goods to be the game that breaks. I mean, it could be up there with any of the other card games, as they say, whether it's Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, or whatever.
It could easily be.
Could be that game.
The game played by the vast majority of people.
And it is getting there. It certainly is capable of doing more and more. And I think this is the first positive sign. Not the first, but this is a very, very positive sign that this is not something that we are ready to just kind of let go. Like this is important enough, and I hope that we see that for other things too. I think X-Wing's got to have something coming. It's getting big and crazy. Now the 2 questions that remain: A, what is the sustainable future still of these style of games? As an L5R potentially player listening to this podcast, you really deserve to know, how is this going to be handled in the long term? Maybe you're not necessarily entitled to it, but I think it would be in FFG's best interest to lay out a program and a system that very clearly defines what that looks like. I don't think they have that worked out. I think they'll see what happens with Netrunner and
see, that's what I'm thinking. Like from the outside looking in, you see the vanguard of these new experiments that they're running. These grand market experiments, like the redone core set with all the cards missing. That's different than what they said when they talked about rotation, and that's awesome. I'm really glad, and I do think that the Netrunner community particularly has welcomed these changes and is really excited about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, this community is all about changing, and that's the whole game, right? You have to adapt constantly.
You've got Netrunner on the vanguard with a crazy new way of refreshing itself. And then you've got L5R with the tournament program, the OP program. So you're beginning to see, if you can plot point A being the tournament program, point B being the Netrunner refresh, you can kind of start to plot a line to see where maybe point C is going and where some of these ideas may be headed. So I'm really excited, especially if these things start to pay off, because of course that will make the decision seem much more correct at FFG. So we could be looking at some really cool stuff.
The question remains though, does this really allow a new player to get in any better than it would have post-rotation?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't. I mean, it's the same product, right? You either were buying the old core set or the new core set. Same amount of product, same volume is out there, same kind of overwhelming. 4 deluxes, all my core sets, and then 6 cycles or however many. So that's still overwhelming. So how are we going to solve that? But this is actually a balance fix. That's what this is. This is like a grand ban list is what this is.
I don't get the sense that this is trying to answer the question, how do we help new people get into this game?
No.
As much as it's the people that are already into this game, how do we make sure they continue enjoying it?
Yeah, and just spread it as wide as possible.
Of the problems to fix, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to send a whole bunch of people into a new game that has those kind of fundamental issues. So
this definitely reads to me as like a baby step. And then if it's successful, we'll probably see more bolder and bolder steps with both the L5R tournament structure.
And then maybe in a year or two, we'll have the system down, and then it's like, okay, this is how LCGs work now.
Yeah,
cool.
Because I think we talked about it before. The invention of LCGs was a market shift for sure, but a lot of people stopped after that and said, all right, well, we reinvented the market, let's carry on. And you see this with Apple, you see this with everybody. You need someone to come in there and then refine this, because there's now enough data to take it to the next level.
Is this Andrew's first big move at FFG?
I think so.
As head of studio?
We'll see.
I think that may be what he's doing.
He's a huge Netrunner fan.
I very much, this conversation is very intriguing.
Yeah.
I very much want to continue asking questions. But one note on I don't remember where I was going. We'll touch base.
But
on
yeah,
that
I mean, an L5R 2 segue is part of this. It's part of this bold new step.
It's what you're about to get into if you're going to play L5R.
Yep,
for sure.
And there's some unknowns.
More on that. Let's actually just go ahead and get right to the main topic. Should you play L5R? So L5R, I guess where I want to start is
just say yes or no and move on.
Yeah, end of episode. Get out of here.
Cue the music.
I would be curious to know for each of you, if you can remember, what was your first impression of the L5R LCG? And I'm wanting to go from there to kind of how that has evolved over time. But start with what was your first impression?
I will tell you, so my first impression, and anyone that wants to can go back to the podcast where we had talked about it, I was over the moon. I was on the hype train for it. We got to play it around whenever that was. I played Crab Clan against somebody else. I did well, and I loved it.
And then you're excited.
And I was excited. I was very, very excited. I'll continue on with the story, and then because Steven can jump in, because this is where he entered, is that then I played again, Crab Clan, same, but against Scorpion. And this is in a beta environment. I think maybe they fixed some of the balance issues. But there's a lot of cancels out of hand. There's a lot of stuff that was very negative for me to play against. And I just never felt like I had an understanding of how I was to beat it. And then I don't think that Scorpion deck ever lost against any of the decks that we put against it at that point. Now, the Scorpion deck could have been way better built. Scorpion could have been way overpowered at that point. But
you also may have been playing your second game ever.
That left a bad flavor in my mouth.
Also, inevitably, the mechanics that it was utilizing are, to me, very negative mechanics. Right? Like, it's the kind of player who's attracted to
and that whole
kind
clan
of nonsense.
is supposed to be using that.
Right.
Like, it shouldn't be a surprise.
You should be like, Scorpion, And we felt like that, like, in a very visceral way.
I have a true hatred for Scorpion just out of the box. Then I played again with Zach the actual core set, and I think I guess I won twice. Once I almost lost, and then I loved it again. So
and we're back.
I don't want to be this person, but right now, if I win, I like it. I love it. If I lose, I hate it.
That's at least very objective of you to realize.
And I don't want to be in that. I would like to enjoy it when I lose.
Well, I don't think it's completely tied to that.
Because it can't be.
I lost
no way.
both of those games.
Yes.
To you.
Yes, you did.
And in both cases, so I was playing Phoenix and you were playing Crab. Crab's very defensive, and Phoenix is they have like a lot of magic, and they mess with the rings and the ring
mess with fate. I found that out the second playthrough.
Yes.
You say Crab is defensive. They're really just about sacrificing themselves. Yeah, defensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, they are defensive, but they're always offing each other.
Yeah, so
they're not that defensive. It's not like they're standing a wall. It's like, we're just
at least the way John was playing it was like
utilizing murder.
Naturally in a lot of the early games, it's like the pacing kind of felt like we each break a province on the first turn and the second turn and the third turn, and we're both sending 2 challenges. And we're making sure we're sending 2 challenges because we don't want to waste a challenge.
Right.
But there'd be turns where it's like I felt like I was ahead, and then John just doesn't do any conflicts. And it's like, I'm saving all of my cards and all of my guys to make sure your conflicts are successful. And it's like, well, dude, I played my guys with the understanding that it wouldn't be so hard to win a conflict. But so the thing about Phoenix to me is they very much feel like that faction in the core set that maybe doesn't quite have it yet. Like they're doing...
Or they're more complex.
Or, okay, riddle me this though. A classic story. The exact same thing said about Martell out of the core set for Game of Thrones. What happens at Worlds?
It wins.
It wins.
So it could just be, that's the thing. The more Zach was playing it against me, the better he was getting. Because he started to see the lines open up.
And that's where a couple of just notes of things, right? Where it's like, even thinking about playing Scorpion that first time, right? The thing about Scorpion is, it's not that they are not letting you do stuff or being mean. It's that they're willing to be dishonorable. And so as long as once you start to actually understand how honor is working in that game, I think you can actually, even though they have these powerful abilities, like Assassination is really a strong card. Any clan can use it. You lose 3 honor and just immediately kill a 2-cost character. But like 3 honor is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And so when you're Scorpion, or playing against Scorpion, you realize that like their most powerful things are costing them honor.
Yeah.
That really, part of my impression of L5R is that you have to understand on a macro level what that clan is trying to do and what rings are important to them and what stats are like.
What resources are they using?
And honor is one of the resources. Very, very nuanced. But all this to say, I played against you with Phoenix that day, and I lost both games.
Yes.
And I am a very competitive person. And I very much like to win, right? And I legitimately didn't care that I lost.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is very different than my initial impressions, which my initial impressions were, this is a absurdly maybe too complex game with a vast amount of nuance. There's literally 2 resource mechanics, right?
There's 2 decks.
And there's 2 decks. And there's
There's a lot of
all these phases,
a lot of fiddly stuff,
even
discarding the stuff off your broken provinces.
Even recently, right? It's like Steve and I are playing, and it's like just the number of things that you have to sequence out and remember, and the importance of the order of these things happening is very high, right? Like you printed the.
Aren't you glad we did that though? It helped tremendously.
Now I understand.
It helped tremendously.
And like
unopposed, break a province, resolving effect.
Even something as simple as like the declaring a conflict. It's like not only do you have to choose the characters, not only do you have to choose where they're attacking, not only do you have to choose which ring of the 5 abilities you might want to trigger or not let your opponent trigger, but then you also still have to choose, is this military or political? And it's like, this is a single conflict.
Yeah.
And it's, anyways, and my initial impression of the game was very much, this is really complex. It's a very thick, dense game. And at the time, very much for the kind of player that wants that experience in particular.
Over to me. My initial impression of the game was, seeing the article, seeing the announcement, I thought it was extremely exciting to have the Rokugan, world kind of given the LCG treatment. I thought that was a home run for just everything fit nicely together. This is the perfect game to do this with, and it seemed like the right time for AEG to pass the reins. And then, you start to, and the theme is right up my alley. Totally up my alley. I actually read some of the books
that was a part of my initial.
Really?
The theme was
Josh really gave 1 or 2 when we used to, because the Oriental Adventures,
that's right,
the D&D was the Rokugan setting. So anyway, we did all of that and then saw some of the articles, and it's like, okay, cool. They honor mechanic, fate mechanic, fill in your provinces. I watched a little bit of old L5R just to kind of get a feel for how that worked, and then first playthrough was a beta playthrough, and I was immediately like,
yeah.
No way.
I was actually playing Scorpion against Steven at that point, and I could just see his demeanor get darker and darker.
It wasn't, it was just, I'm looking at it from a systems perspective, and my favorite games are Netrunner, Destiny, Spoils, and then I was very much into Agate first edition and second edition if I really were to get on that horse again. I just haven't been motivated enough to do so. But that was the first real structured game that I'd encountered, Agate first, because, Spoils is like wide open. You can play a resource anytime, you can, spend resource, draw cards. So you have action sequences that you're in control. You have a lot of agency, right? Netrunner, you have a ton of, freedom, player ability to make decisions. Netrunner, you have a ton of that, right? On both the Corp and the Runner side, you have very simple choices. There are like 6 or 7 options for both. Are you going to get money? Are you going to get cards? Are you going to install something?
And
are you going to
do
run?
it in the order you want.
You do it however you want, in whatever fashion you deem appropriate. And then you go to Destiny, and it's like, we're both doing the same thing. We're activating characters, we're resolving dice, we're playing stuff out of hand. That's basically it, right?
But you have the freedom to do any of those things, right?
In whatever order, and then maybe we go here, and maybe this is happening. So you just feel very unrestrained. You feel like, to me, those kinds of games disappear very quickly. The mechanics of the game disappear. And I'm having an experience that is being supported by these mechanics that are no longer in my field of vision. Right?
You're not like walking through rooms,
right?
Like in Destiny, it's like I can do anything I want right now.
Right.
Spoils the same way, Netrunner the same way.
Right.
With L5R, you're literally walking through, this is what you can do in room A.
It's
and
very
room B,
structured.
and room C.
It's very much like a board game. That was my first impression, was that this is like me picking up a board game manual and saying, okay, we resolve these things, and then we do this to the board, and then we do that, and then I make a couple of choices, and then everyone goes around the table and makes some choices, and then we do this thing, then we resolve this, flip these cards over, and then we count points. Right? It's like that kind of a round structure. So it very much felt like that. And so I was immediately just like, ooh, not sure about that. There's going to be a group of people who want to play that, right? That makes this like complex mechanical board game feeling game. There are people going to want that. And so that was the initial impression, right? Questionable.
Highly questionable, yeah.
Highly questionable. Not certain that it was for me. And then moving forward, played some more games, kept an eye on it, kept looking at, well, what's actually happening here? Honor's moving around. That's pretty interesting. Fate. I think the fate actually of characters is phenomenal. I think it solves one of the greatest issues of traditional card games, just how they've always been made since really Magic and beyond. I pay for something, I put it out, it stays there until it's gone. The end.
Until like my opponent.
Yeah, my opponent does something, or I make a mistake, or there's a card that removes it, or whatever. And so, one of the biggest problems to me with these heavy conflict games is that things just get out of control. There's a point where too many decisions are present to actually make meaningful ones, right? Where it's just like, there's 17 variables here of ways I could attack, defend, and they've got 16 people, and and it's just like, I might as well throw my hands up. There's you'd need a computer analysis to determine the best line of play, right?
And you get that's where you get the Velar Morghulis and stuff like that, the board clearing effects, because those become necessary.
And that's why it became so important to have that, right? So my initial impression of L5R, honestly, it was like I was playing a PlayStation game and a 64 game, but I was staring at the controller, right?
It's like, what button do I hit? And you've seen that when someone plays and they have to be like, oh,
and they're
this
like
is how I punch.
Looking, and it's like, okay, now this, and then they're looking at the screen, looking down. But the controller never disappeared for me in those early games.
Yeah.
So I was immediately skeptical.
And I think to add kind of to some of my impressions early on in a similar way, I always compared it to Quapping. Which was this computer game.
The running thing.
Yeah, it's like you have the 4 buttons that control like the legs.
QWOP, I imagine, right?
Yeah,
Quap.
So,
anyways,
and you gotta learn how to run.
But the first several games, it's like you're looking at the keys, and then your guy's just falling over, and then you start over, and you're falling over, and like eventually you kind of get the rhythm.
Yeah.
And like at some point you're not thinking about it anymore. Yeah. And then you're walking, and there's a hill, and it changes, and there's a rock you have to go over, and there's a thing in your way, or whatever.
And I was just wondering if that would ever happen. If it would ever get
that was the grand trick for me.
Yeah.
Is could I get to the point where it felt smooth? Because looking at the other things, I walked away impressed by it. I like the theme. I like the design. Like, this box looks great.
Yeah, and the art is tremendous. I mean, I think it's a gorgeous experience in a true board game style, right? Like, so much of that is the experience of seeing the pieces and the tangible element of it, and it's just like, yeah, I'm absorbed in this.
Sure, totally.
I feel like it.
And most notably, mechanically, I really liked the fate mechanic, which was the characters going away. It wasn't just a standard board control kind of situation, which adds to the complexity because it's an unfamiliar kind of thing. I was also a very big fan of the honor dial. Not really the dial itself, but the way you draw cards. Yeah. Like, where all of a sudden...
There's always a cost.
Instead of it being a built-in, like, throws, you just draw 2. It's like, well, now there's kind of that X-Wing, like, hidden information, simultaneous reveal, risk involved in drawing cards and understanding what the value of your cards is and that kind of thing. But then surrounding those things I liked was this sea of nuance and complexity, which I knew could either be the best thing in the world or the worst thing in the world. Because honestly, with a game that you dive into like this, right, no matter what it is, whether it's Destiny or Netrunner or X-Wing or any of these games or Legend of the Five Rings, the more I understand that the more complex and more things there are in the game, the more nuance there can be and the further you can go. And so it actually reminded me a lot of the Star Wars LCG in that sense, where it wasn't very linear, and it didn't seem the version of the game that seems obvious didn't seem that exciting and was kind of like almost disenfranchised. Like, it made people like, I don't like this, right? That initial like, I just don't get it.
Yeah, this is weird.
But then at some point you get comfortable in the system, without the LCG at least, where you could do the keys and like you're not looking at the board anymore and you're kind of just in it. But I remember you commenting one time watching me play at Worlds. You were like, it's the game I just still can watch and have no idea what's going on.
Who's winning or losing or anything. I look at the board and it's like, well, someone's going to stand up at some point.
And that's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
They're going to stand up and shake and someone's going to have a smile. I thought you meant like the characters, and then I realized you were talking about the players. So my initial impression was very like cautious because of that complexity. But I think the LCG helped me want to see if I could get to that point of comfort.
To me, every game. So games aren't inherently, improved by complexity. Like they don't actually open up more possibilities by being complex. There's to me a simple equation of, your rule set is this bar, and the amount of possibility for experience is like this bar, right? And you're trying to get this as small as possible and this as big as possible. That should be the goal for me. That's why I love abstract games.
Yeah.
That's why I love games like Destiny, where your rule set is tiny, right? Here are the 5 things
front
you
and
can
back
do.
page.
You activate a character, you can resolve a die, you can play cards out of your hand. But with that tiny rule set, the amount of possibility can be phenomenal.
Sure.
So you could take like a Destiny rule set or a Netrunner rule set and add an extra layer of complexity. Let's say like an Imperial favor. So for Netrunner, if you end the turn with more credits than your opponent, then you get this side benefit for next round. You can do that, but that kind of a move you have to weigh. Is it adding to this, and is it proportionately increasing this?
Totally.
And so going into L5R, it felt very much like there were a lot of decisions made that were not good trades in terms of the complexity of the rule set versus the possibilities that it opened up in the system. Now, all that to say, I guess you can kind of go to the current state if you want to.
Yeah, I'm
reflect
interested to
on
see
that.
where you are at this point.
Or how has that evolved for each of you?
Well, here's the thing that I needed for L5R to work for me. I needed to print out that rules reference. I needed to print out the steps. Right. I needed to see every step breakdown, how everything was going to work and resolve. And Zach and I played a couple of games with that literally sitting next to the board, just staring at it and announcing.
We actually walked through everything every
phase.
time.
Nice. Yeah,
It's like, okay, start of draw phase.
No shortcuts.
Set your dials. Okay, set dials. Put face down. Reveal. Action window. I didn't know that.
Oh wait, I can do things.
I can do things here.
Aside, by the way, historically speaking, I'm not a rules guy, right? I don't like rules. I like to just like dive into the game, right? I read the rules until I feel like I can just dive in, and then I'm gone.
Yeah.
Tim always hated that growing up.
Yeah, because you're the guy getting the rules wrong.
Sure, but I'm a guy playing 2 hours before he's ready to play, right? It's like I just want to start playing.
That's right.
Because I'll figure it out. Like, I'll get there.
That feels wrong. Is that right?
But you'll encounter a card and it's like, this surely can't work the way I thought it was working.
Back
and
to
then
the
you
drawing
learn.
board.
But because I don't care about winning, like up front, it's like let's get in. And then we'll
make
we'll
mistakes
learn.
and you
that's
learn
just
from
how that's just how I play. But
we're very different.
the fact that like we were sitting there reading through the things is like number one way to get me out.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my goodness, this is a chart.
Yeah.
Like we were anyways, go ahead.
We had a chart. And so I was reading through the chart and, especially when we got to conflict, where it's like, okay, we have a conflict happening here. I'm going to declare my attackers. And meantime, I'm going to pick up the ring, flip it to the side I want, place it on your province, declare my challenge, and then,
Province gets revealed.
Yeah. Province is immediately revealed, and that kind of subsection of the thing is over. And now you declare defenders, right? And then you do your thing. And now we're going to enter the conflict. And so starting with a defender, you can play an action back and forth. So we start doing that, and then it's like, okay, you've passed, I've passed. Now we go to the end of the conflict, so let's resolve it. Check for unopposed. Check to see if we have enough strength to break the province. Check, claim the ring ability. Then actually physically claim the ring. Then if it was a tie, return. So like, you do all of this stuff, and then everything returns home bound. And it's like, okay, we got through one conflict.
3 to go.
But what happened in all of that was I started to actually get into it. I started to get it. It started to sink in. We started announcing it. I didn't need the rules reference after like the second game.
Stopped looking at the controller.
Stopped looking at the controller, right?
You may be surprised, one of the biggest moments for me was you specified that after conflict there was a fate phase and a regroup phase. And for some reason that division where it's like, oh, the fate phase, we do literally everything involving fate. Right?
And there's an action window there too.
Yeah, and it's like fate goes onto the rings.
I think.
Fate goes off of the characters.
Yeah.
Fate. And then it's like, okay, it at least divided, because normally it's like after conflict, it's just like, it's like all these things are happening, right? Rings go back, fate goes on, characters stand up. Yeah, anyways. It's
was that ring there? Did I return that already?
I mean, you're kind of explaining, this is why the initial impression was complexity, because you explained one conflict, and it was an 18-step program on like how to conflict.
It is.
So to continue, you stopped looking at the controller.
I stopped looking at the controller.
Started getting into it.
Yeah, and I started really enjoying the game. but here's the thing. Here's the important thing about L5R to me. And this may be a personal thing. There are going to be people who disagree with that. There are people that play Armada in tournaments, right? There are people that would play Legion tournaments, right? Those kinds of games to me, I just don't. I can't. I wouldn't go there.
They're just in a separate section of your brain.
It's like no, I don't want to say casual because it's not casual because you are, in all intents, like you're trying to do things and do things well.
It's kind of the
But it's
distinction.
leisure.
I would call it a lean back versus a lean forward.
That's right. That's so correct, and I love that actually. That's so correct. So playing L5R to me, I am looking for an immersive, somewhat long experience. I don't want to feel rushed. I want to consider my options. I want to be in a relaxed and comfortable environment, and I want to go to Rokugan for a while, and then I want to watch all the experiences unfold, see what clan was doing what, how that all turned out, and then I want to be done with it, sit back and be like, wow, that was amazing. That
was fun.
In the same way that I sit back after an Arena Rex game and just say, how that all just unfolded was amazing.
It was super.
The crowd was on your side here, and then Sven did this thing and ran up. What I don't want to do is churn out 6 45-minute rounds of, resolve the conflict, do this, attack, do there, clear defenders, and have all these things going on. That game does exist for that audience, and it is a fine thing to do. I'm not saying that's wrong. But for me, and maybe I'm just getting old, I don't want to do that with this game.
Sure.
I treat it like a very special, almost like in the board game section of my head. Like I want to have one person over to my house, or I want to go to the store, sit down with a single person, turn on some good music, drink a beer, and
some
go.
tea.
Yeah, or some tea.
And go to Rokugan.
Put some like Shinto throat singing on and just groove out.
Which relates to our experience. So after we did our walking through the phases steps session, I played with John.
Yeah.
I think it was even the same day.
It was the same day because I burnt your brain out.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm like, well, but we turned on some music.
Some Japanese traditional
and
music.
then we made some tea. And we played, and the first game, well, technically, you beat me 3 times. The very first game, I learned a very good secret, which is you can play conflict cards that are actions that aren't, specifically characters and attachments cannot be played during the conflict phase. The other cards can. So he plays a 1-cost character, and then I'm 5-cost champion with 2 fate on it. I'm going to wreck you. And then he's 1-cost event. We each have to sacrifice a character, and I'm like,
oh no.
Yeah.
And then we look it up, and I was like, I didn't think you could play that card yet. And he's like, oh yeah. And we look it up, and then I was like, well, want to restart?
Yeah.
But anyways, we made the team, we played for a while, and I lost pretty handily. And I'm on
the second time. You did really well the second time.
Well, it's I was sprinting to kind of stay up.
Yeah.
Anyways, not to dive into that, but I really think that. As for me, I was very concerned about the complexity, and I'm definitely probably at the 7-10 game range. It became less looking at the controller and more kind of just playing the game. And as a game to just go to and enjoy, and to have that experience, and to not be in a rush, and I think it's incredible. It feels thematic. It feels like we're playing in this universe. It's not really tedious anymore to kind of follow through the steps, but at the same time, I don't view L5R as a sport. I'm not gonna. I don't feel like I want to train for it and then go play in the big tournament and not that that's not gonna be a thing, but man, just talking through the steps in conflict, it's even in Destiny, there's moments where I have to slow my opponent down to walk through the steps of this one little interaction. And so I remember playing Thrones 1.0 back in the day, and it felt very similar in that
I think this lands right at where Thrones ultimately is. And maybe with our newfound perspective, I would feel the exact same way about Thrones. That why I actually just want to play this in a lean back mode and see Westeros unfold with all of these characters rather than trying to churn out game after game and compete with it.
Yeah, I will say in a tournament there are 2 things that strike me. One is that, of course, the better that you know your deck, the better you know what cards you could get, and the better you know what cards you get. Yeah, then that will lead to, I think, faster games. I do think that there is a majority of people who want to play the game in a lean back scenario, and I think maybe one of the strengths of L5R is that it can cater to both those crowds, and you see the OP kind of going that direction. But if you want to sit back and have just like a forever expanding board game story experience, how cool is that? And
it's
then
about as good as it gets.
if you're the person, because I really do think that while we may not necessarily be this niche, there is definitely a group of people that want this sort of experience in a tournament setting, like this just like hardcore
there's a large group.
thing. And that's and I really would say that these people haven't been served in a while. That it's that the games that have been coming out, especially out of FFG, have been more towards your Destiny, quick, lighter kind of stuff. And then that's left a huge niche for a game to come in and fill that void. And I think that's what L5R can be for a lot of people.
It's just like Luke said with Torchbearer or Burning Wheel. He's like, we've done all these indie role-playing systems that were all about taking, D&D essentially and removing the rules and adding all this player freedom and player agency. And that's very similar to what more the recent game design has been about, is about, minimizing this and maximizing this. But that's not to say that there isn't some value to having a thicker, like kind of more complex game. And that's what Luke said. He was like, I wanted to build a system you could dive into, you can sink your teeth into.
You get good at.
You get good at. Knowing the rules in the system is a part of the game. And that's actually, I think, probably a pretty big segment of players.
Yeah.
So giving something that is this big, vast kind of system to learn and master as an art form, and then knowing the system, playing within it well, that's true. That audience probably is there, and I think we might see a lot more of it than we expected to be.
And I will tell you, like, that 700-person tournament at Gen Con, this was sort of, I was at my, like, ho-hum phase of L5R whenever that happened, and the people that I talked to that came out of that, nobody mentioned any, like, because I was trying to be, like, really coy, nobody mentioned anything about the concerns that I had. So those concerns weren't shared by, at least, obviously, the sample size I had versus 700 people, but online, in forums. Like, I have not seen the people that have played in that tournament. No one was like, yeah, well, it wasn't what I wanted. Everyone was like, yeah, this game is really great. This game is really good. So at some point, you have to realize, like, maybe, there is that section, that niche of people who have just been longing for a game like this.
Or just picked it up easier than we did.
Or just picked it up easier than we did.
Well, and I think that's there's a lot of people that L5R could easily appeal to. And I do think that once you become a sophisticated player that's played a lot and is very comfortable, the games will move faster.
Yep.
But I'm at the point where I get the sense that this game is going to take, on average, probably an hour and 15 minutes. And probably when you talk about derivatives of the directions it could go, I think the shorter games are going to be 40, 45 minutes.
Yep.
The longer games are going to be an hour and a half plus. And so then the question is, like, how long are tournament rounds?
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you make it an hour 15, over half your games are not finishing, which is not
I mean,
great.
you guys had a 2.5 hour game.
Yeah.
Like a system that can create a 2.5 hour game, that's worth noting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it takes me back to, like, the days of the first board games, Axis and Allies and Risk, where people would play for a week, like one game for a week. But there's a reward in that. That's really cool, and that can happen.
Yeah, and I think that was in our 2.5 hour game, I felt like part of that was because I didn't know how to quap, so to speak. Right? It's like I run into the rock every time, and I'm like, I don't know how to get past this, right? I probably need to change something I'm doing. But it is there were a couple moments where it was like, I would do this big thing, right? I'd pull it off, and I'm like, oh man, I did this awesome thing, and I'm now ahead. And then we get to the next turn, and I'm like, I'm not really sure how ahead I am anymore. And then it would drag on.
Good ebb and flow going on.
And
it's really cool.
One of the things I really want to bring up about L5R, and this is the thing that seriously impresses me, and I see it more and more every time that I play, but of all the games that I've ever played, and I want to bring this sort of theoretical point from a game design perspective. What they seem to have gotten completely rid of, in their design of L5R, the new L5R, is really the concept of momentum. Mono no Aware takes care of that, but even just the game itself. The upside of that is that at any point you could someone could change it around. I have never felt in any of my games at L5R that I was done for, and I was just watching it.
Or so far ahead that you just won.
Or so far ahead that I just won. Like, even in Zach and I's last game, it was like, oh dang, I can see this slipping through my fingers. The downside of that is that you don't ever get in that slipstream. So whenever you do something that might change momentum, you still have to continue to fight for that. Always.
Well, and I think potentially the downside there were moments where I felt like I had done a lot of work to engineer this moment in this turn, and then I didn't really turn.
Yeah.
It was just like it's hard to explain, but it's like it'd be like if you achieve something and then this happens at work where it's like big thing, big task accomplished, and then it's like no pause, no break, no hey, you did great. It's just like, all right, next project.
Yeah.
It's like let's go.
Next project, second conflict.
Yeah, it's like all right, next thing or next turn.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like part of the benefit of that is that you can turn it around at any point. Part of the negative is that in Destiny, when I do a big play like that, I just created a significant advantage.
Yeah.
Like, and I have an immediate reward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you get
feel
that hit of the endorphins.
That is, it's kind of interesting. You never really feel. I certainly have never felt like I'm in control of this game.
Yeah,
like I do in others.
And that like this, to simplify, the downside it can feel like a slog because again you never get in the old slipstream. But on the upside, if you're against that, like you never see it floating away from you. And that's pretty cool. The one thing that really helped me in these last 2 games understand and I think appreciate the system more is playing it not on I'm gonna do something awesome this turn, but like I'm going to play a 2 or 3 turn game. Even with Crab, and
Which you were doing very well.
Well, thank you. Tim apparently had built a deck where
I think it's just breaking the service of the game.
Yeah.
Right. Like we came at it first time at a Star Wars LCG. We came at it expecting get as much value out of your fate as you can this turn. Get your things out. You have 2 challenges available. You should get 2 effects, because you don't fall behind. Try to break provinces, that kind of thing. But then you're like, but if fate doesn't go away, then why?
Yeah, exactly.
Why play
Can I have
everything?
a way more powerful turn next turn
Yes.
or the turn after?
I mean, even just the economics of it, even just a 2-cost character with 1 extra fate on it saves you money. So if you can, Crab, obviously, I could put 2 people out and just defend both your challenges, save up, and then have the board with everyone that had fate, and they at least stand 2 turns. So that's basically I'm getting 2 uses out of that card. I'm paying the cost 2 times. And so once you start to see the economics of that, saving and spending and saving and spending and looking forward a turn ahead becomes really important.
So with all the experiences kind of now coalescing into your current opinion and view of the Legend of the Five Rings LCG, who would you recommend this game for? Right? Like someone that's looking at it right now, if they're listening to the podcast, Should You Play L5R?
Yeah.
I would assume that they are interested and either on the fence or maybe they're already committed into it. But who do you think this game is really, who would you make a recommendation for?
I would say number 1, I would recommend it for board game players who have been kind of on the periphery of the LCG market for a while and now want to kind of step in.
card games.
It's going to be a familiar-ish setting and setup with potentially infinite expansions, and you're going to kind of get that experience. I think that would be awesome, right? Like, I mean, take Puerto Rico and then put something else kind of cool in it every few months. That's great. Like, you can take the thing you love, which is the board games, and then add it into sort of this lifestyle mentality and really like find a community. I think that is awesome. So that would be my number 1 recommendation. People who like the deeper lean back kind of games.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, well, if you're interested in Rokugan, the theme, if you're an old L5R player, you owe it to yourself to at least try it. I mean, it's hard to really know who's going to click with this, but one thing I would say is don't become frustrated by how much there is up front. And that's why it is so good for board games, because you're used to pulling out the manual and being like,
well, and setting the
here we
board
are
up for an
again.
hour.
I have no idea what I'm doing. We're going to clunk through this first play. It might take us 4 hours. But then the second one, well, now we can teach the game to others and we kind of have an idea of the rules. So that is why that's a really good demo to hit on that. But if you're interested in the theme, if you're interested in Rokugan, it certainly made me feel like I was there. So you owe it to yourself to give it a shot. I have others too. You want to do one?
Yeah, sure. One? I mean, I think it's an evolving thing for my own taste as a player in games, because I very much grew up playing competitive card games and wanted games that I could use as a sport, right? Like I could train for the big events, I could go play in the big events. And I think the first game that really kind of started shaking me from that was X-Wing, because for a long time I was like refusing to play it competitively. It's like I just want this to be the game where I fly ships around and make pew pew noises,
Right.
and I don't want it to be like the grind and like
See how that went.
Yeah, well, I eventually got sucked in. It's a great game, but with this game for me, it's like it is way more about the experience of the game and the experience of spending time with a friend. And so like when we played the other day, like I think I didn't have those like endorphin releasing short term fast, like Destiny's great about this, right? Big roll, like excitement.
It's the same thing. I swear that is why Destiny and Netrunner feel so similar to me, because they have moments of complete endorphin release.
Just total like
it's like I found points. Whoa. I just nailed that roll. Whoa!
Yeah, like, both of which are like big random events. You're like, oh, that's awesome. You roll the dice, you find the agenda, like that kind of stuff is fantastic.
And the inverse of they found the agenda, or I rolled and it's all blanks, or they rolled the damage, right? And that's why I love the back and forth of Destiny is that you roll and then now your opponent has to react.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a lot of intensity there. Thrones is a stroll in the park. Right?
Thrones or L5R?
L5R.
Or
Maybe Thrones.
Yeah.
L5R is like going on a stroll in the park. It's like if the goal is to get to the end of the stroll, I think you've already missed really the point. And I'm really curious to see how that plays out in tournaments.
We're waiting.
Yeah, but it's real. It's like the point is to go on the stroll. So like when we were playing the other day and had the tea and had the music, I didn't have anything going on that night.
It was lovely.
I didn't, and it was literally the point was the stroll. Now I will note there is the stroll happening, but I still do not like Imperial Favor. Can we talk about that for a second? I just want to mention it.
Yeah, I'm on this boat as well.
Like, I still, as strolly as I've been enjoying it, I just don't get it. It's
that's the extra on top of complexity that just, I mean, I can see it. I can see the meeting or the conversations where it's like, well, how do we incentivize not just going all out every turn? First of all, do you need to really? But and then second, it's like we need some kind of emperor mechanic because that's a very important part of the world, right? So what are we going to do? It's like, well, we can't put it here. We can't put it here. What we can do is dominance and thrones. Reward
kind of an end of round thing.
Give a little reward for holding back and maybe being a little more honorable by not going out and conquering with everybody. But even there, I feel like there were 1,000 ways to do that better. Like, first of all, what you've introduced is a new component. Second, the hardest thing to remember. It's going to be the source of 1,000 takebacks. It's like, oh yeah, no, wait, I forgot I have the +1 in military, so I actually do break the province. That was like last turn. And it's like...
Or like... we had a game where we forgot it to move the favor. Like, we just skipped over the Imperial Favor.
Yeah.
And the next conflict's coming, and it's like, wait a second, I should have won that last turn.
Yeah.
So
it's like,
now you're in a mess. Like,
and now we've already played characters, so do you... And you have to... It's two-sided. Do you flip it to military or political? Another choice to be made. Here's an easy fix. Imperial Favor, whoever gets it gets an honor. Can we just... gets a fate. Or chooses a fate or an honor. You already have the components there. It's a small, tangible reward. If you need it in the game, if you need some kind of an emperor call out, I guess you can do it.
But I feel like, again, if I were trying to figure out how to work the emperor into this, I think it's more meta. It's like even the fact I think they, it's like whoever, I forget how they were determined, some clan, whichever one was most honorable or most whatever, that dictated future things in the game, like prizes, where it's like the prizes at Winter Court are going to be based around the clan that does this during the season. It's like, the emperor chooses to honor your clan at Winter Court with this. Anyways, it still feels like the thing that's just kind of like taped on.
Yeah.
It's like a duct taped onto the game.
Now you open up where you can say the player with the Imperial Favor gets access to these cards.
I don't think we need it, but though. I just don't need it.
Yeah, you just don't.
Especially with the rolls.
You just don't. Oh man, another just.
Which I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
it's cool. That's fine. It's fine. But I'm just saying, it's another thing that I have to remember now. Whenever I win a Void Challenge, this other thing is happening now too. So
thankfully, it changes once a year.
That's true.
So as
potentially with Imperial Favor, and I hate it as much as anybody at this table, but potentially we just haven't seen the cards that make it make sense yet. Because in I think all of our experiences, the person that wins the Imperial Favor is the person that wins. Like, if you win the most amount of rings, you get the Imperial Favor. It's by and large that's happening. So it's just a win more mechanic, which I hate. right? Because I've been
true.
against that, especially against Scorpion. It's like,
Well,
I can't field anybody. He's winning all these rings, and I'm Krabs. I don't have any glory anyway. So he just keeps getting the honor and keeps getting stronger, potentially.
As the Phoenix player with a lot of glory,
see, that's the thing.
I was winning a lot.
It does add people with glory characters, and I know a lot of old L5R players have talked about the honor win being a big thing, being the sit back, drink your tea in court, and then somehow win the game. And so potentially, as more packs come out, as those characters, the glory characters kind of fit in a little bit more, it will make more sense. But I will agree, as of right now, I hate that thing.
We have honored and dishonored to handle glory, right? We've already got, and you can even target events if your glory status 4 or higher. Only play if you can spot a character.
Yeah, I just we'll see.
Yeah,
I'm willing to be optimistic.
I'm willing to be wrong.
It's a very small little thing, but it's also
so
just
frustrating.
like I
That's
just
kind of
don't.
the problem with it.
Yeah, I just don't understand it. I don't know that there will ever be a point, hypothetically, even in my mind, what they could do to make me like that mechanic.
Yeah.
And it's fine.
I mean,
but
the thing to remember is that this has been in there for a very long time, the Imperial Favor mechanic, and this has been play tested by a ton of people who all are super excited about it. So surely if it was that small of a thing that was ultimately that detrimental, someone would have threw the flag.
Were there a bunch of people being all excited about the Imperial Favor?
I don't know, man. See, I don't know. I don't know about that because, like, in terms of development of these LCGs, we've seen things go sideways 1,000 ways.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, it's not like there's this giant honing process happening that everybody's 100% accurate. It's like,
that's true.
How did Faust get printed? Like, if you could actually judge what's healthy for a game, then, so I don't know. I think there are mistakes that are always going to be made.
Yeah.
And I think this was ultimately just a mistake in the design of the game.
I think the trick for me is, at least as it sits now, you could take Imperial Favor.
Unless I'm sure Brad disagrees entirely.
I'd love to have
someone does, and I would love a comment on that.
But
everybody else.
At least for me, right now, I think Imperial Favor could leave the game, and my experience would suffer 0.
Yeah.
It'd be better.
And that's
been my experience.
Philosophically, I like the idea of boiling things down to their essence, right? It's something I'm very into.
Right.
And like this whole box, right? It's very minimal, like this whole theme. And it's like, again, this is a very complex game. It's like the last thing I want is anything that, because there's that thing, right? Like if you take away the honor dial or the honor resource, the game is different. It loses something.
Yeah.
Versus like Imperial Favor is like, I guess my guardsman can now attack you because that mechanic's gone. It's like, okay, it could have been that you can't attack the player with the first player token, or Imperial Favor could have been you get the first player token.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyways, so
questionable. Some complexity, potentially too complex for its own good. Not really adding value.
One thing I would like to ask is, I think you've been doing some research on this, which is, would you recommend this game for people that played the CCG? Any thoughts there?
Well, let's talk to my old friend Grant Huddleston. I reached out to him whenever L5R was starting to pop around and basically said, what's going on? Because I knew he was in L5R. In fact, he said he played L5R off and on for 20 years, and it's always been my game, right? You hear this from a lot of L5R players, old L5R. Even when Grant was playing Netrunner and was doing very well, would have dropped everything to play L5R, if that was really what it was going to be about. He said whether it's the gameplay, the storyline, even the community, there's a magnetic attraction to L5R that keeps bringing people back. And that's 100% correct. So in terms of how old L5R players are feeling in his circle, he said that with the current hype about the new release, I've had friends that I've maintained somewhat infrequent contact with over the years, all reaching out to each other abuzz with excitement over the new version. A new take on the game forming the timeline reset to the relative calm before the second day of Thunder, roughly the backdrop for the original 20 years ago, opens up possibilities for a new but refreshing take on the game. And Grant's basically take on this is, objectively, the things that were problematic in the old game have been solved.
The holdings, the snowball.
The holding, so basically I think this is a well-learned lesson. Anytime you're tying income to random card draws, you have a problem. I think Thrones has consistently learned this lesson as well. If I don't draw my econ and you do, Magic, if I draw my land and you don't,
or if you draw too many land at the end,
you just don't. Just stop. So L5R has just had you get 7 fate. Like everybody's on equal footing, so it doesn't matter. So that's great. So your holdings aren't necessary to generate income, which is important. One of the biggest differences is the mono no war thing, the overpaying. That's just an entirely new game. Like, there's really no comparison there. You're doing, not a surprise. There's stats that you're comparing. not a surprise there. But your decisions to overinvest and keep things on the board and play for later turns is a totally new kind of experience. So it's just new. It's not necessarily better or worse than the way that it was handled the old way. But the most important thing really is that your provinces are not inactive once they're destroyed.
Used to be. Card draw.
Can you imagine, right? Like in L5R right now, if you lost a province on the first turn, it no longer got refilled.
Yeah. That's just, again, win more, right?
So now it's 4 options versus your 3 options, and then it can...
And you're already ahead because you're winning. And there wasn't the fate mechanic to make characters go away. So their characters are actually still on the board, and you lost yours. So now you're even further behind.
Yeah. And I think whenever you won a conflict in old L5R, like anyone involved on the losing side was eliminated.
Yeah.
You just murdered everybody, right? So it's like, well, how are you going to come back from that? Honor's way different. So like in the old game, you used to have to, collect like the 5 rings, and that was a certain kind of victory that you could get. That's completely gone. I think it's cool that the rings are now the central kind of focus of the game rather than something you might include in your deck and do stuff with. Certain players love that about old L5R, no doubt, but here it is. It's just a new thing. It's a new mechanic, a new way of playing it. And then Honor's way different. Honor's as a resource. So there was a lot of original, Grant said that honor gains came from buying personalities for their personal honor, certain holdings that produced honor as well as gold. So it sounded a lot like influence in old terms, like this secondary mechanic that was going. The race to 40 honor is how it was another way to win in the original, and it was very much a solo venture, especially in an honor rocket mirror match. So you imagine 2 decks that are just trying to get to 40 honor.
Yeah.
They're almost not even interacting.
Yeah, I remember
with each
hearing
other, right?
about basically players playing different games. It's like you're trying to win conflicts, and I'm just sitting over here drinking tea.
Absolutely. And then of course card draw is different. It's all very different.
But was his general vibe like, hey, I'm really excited, and I'm gonna. You have a conclusion.
Here's the general conclusion, that Grant tossed my way. We call it N5R and O5R. Original,
new and old.
5 rings, new and old, however you want to do it. N5R has me very excited about the further prospects of the game, not to disparage the past at all, but obviously the game had stagnated some under AEG and needed a breath of fresh air. For a 20-year-old game born in the 90s with 90s CCG design principles, it had aged rather well, but there were some mechanics that clearly had to be developed around. And this feels very much like Game of Thrones First Edition, by the way. Taken in a vacuum, the changes made to N5R feel drastic, but there's something intangible that FFG has captured. The game feels like L5R, which is arguably its greatest strength. The elements that have always made the game great are present in full force. The focus on honor, a balance of military and political dealings, and small-scale skirmishes. And with 20 years of experience under the belt, they have even more so been brought to the forefront. The storyline reset takes the focus back to the iconic characters that everyone knows and loves, with a few tweaks and the potential to forge a new path. All in all, a great time to be an L5R fan. So, Grant, huge fan. But
nice.
let me throw this against Spags, who we talk about a lot. Scott, also a giant L5R fan, and total pass.
Really? Now, how many games does he play? Do you have
he played in the opening tournament.
Okay.
Here's what he said. He said, I played Netrunner.
The end.
That was it. Yeah, it's
I think
it's so different. And if you're looking for a Netrunner type experience, this is not it.
Yeah.
Like, these LCGs are not all just go to anyone that you want and have a great experience. If you're a Netrunner player and you love Netrunner, it's nothing like this. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Wait, we have a question about that coming up.
Okay, good. But like Thrones and L5R are going to share a similar kind of audience, and I hope that there is some mingling there. I hope some people drop out of L5R and get into Thrones, and find a better fit there. Maybe some people out of Thrones into L5R. But like Netrunner and Destiny, it's kind of like, I always say, it's the Litzinger versus the Nate French and
School,
Co.
it's like different
kind
schools
of
of
school.
thought, right?
So
Aristotle and...
Yeah, so there's a lot of players that are super excited. There's some players that hate it. But if you are an old L5R player, you should at least, budget, assuming, get a copy of the core set, or find a friend, play it. Give me this. Give me 10 games.
I was going to go 5, but yes,
10's a
games.
lot. But I actually think
give me 10 games.
Anyone who's getting in needs to play 10 games. So I said the same thing with Star Wars LCG back in the day. It was like, if you go to 10 games and you still don't like it, and that's a lot to ask.
Yeah.
And I think to add a note on your Netrunner front, I don't think it's the case that someone who enjoys Netrunner wouldn't enjoy this game.
That's correct.
But I think if someone someone is looking for their next game, right? So like we talked about, when you play Netrunner, once you're a Netrunner player, you're always a Netrunner player.
Yeah.
Once you're an L5R player, I think you're always an L5R player. But the reality, like for someone like Spags, I think, is that he was always a Netrunner player. He just didn't know it, right? And then he got shown that, and it's like, well, this is actually my flavor. And if I'm going to have a game, a singular game that I am just, it's my sport, it's what I do, it's what I talk about, it's what I eat for breakfast, that's his game.
Yeah.
But if you are thinking that L5R is going to be that, and you are the kind of player like Destiny or Netrunner, if that was your style, be cautious, right?
Yeah.
I mean, give it 10 games, but be aware what you're getting into when you do this. And I think another great thing to do is we have our Learning L5R series. And this is there's a basic deck building guide, and we're doing gameplay videos where we're showing off all the clans, and we have deck lists. And that's a really great way to watch the game firsthand. And I think it will get you 4 or 5 of those games in before you even actually get the stuff.
You can sneak one in.
Yeah, and then once you get it, building the decks and playing it and playing 4 or 5 more games, you will very easily know if this is the system for you or not. But it does take trying it.
I do think it is really worth mentioning. I know some people have asked, anytime we talk about L5R, well, are you guys hyped for it or are you not hyped for it? And we're trying to be cool and we're trying to be like academic about it because we know this is as objective as we possibly can. I think it is fair to say that we did the same thing with Destiny. And you didn't like it till you were about 10 games in. Now, the difference is you can play 10 games of Destiny in about 45 seconds. And you really just go for it. And, it's going to take you a good week to get 10 games of L5R.
It was actually...
If you play nonstop, it'll take you about a week.
I played 3 or 4 games of constructed Destiny and was... I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I totally get it. And L5R was very much like, once I started building decks, it was better.
Yeah.
Right? But then once I got like 5 or 6 games in, it was like, aha.
Yeah, the well goes deep.
And that's all documented in the blog you wrote. The same thing happened. So that L5R is not necessarily different in that way. It's not different in the number of games you need to learn it and enjoy it. It is different in the amount of time that it takes. And I mean, the most important thing is, for me, as I'm playing L5R, to actually count down those games. Because you can kind of see yourself having progress, and I guarantee you by the 10th game, you'll be in a different place. Even if it doesn't feel like it on the 8th game, or the 7th game, or the 4th game, it's going to feel different on the 10th and the 1st, because the great secret to all things in the world, the more that you do something, the better that you get at it. And if you want to leverage that, it's not too much of an investment to get 1 core set and play some demo-ish games, just like you would a PlayStation disc back in the 90s.
Rules reference.
And if you really like it, and print up the rules reference.
If you're anything like me, just get the rules reference and have it right there and just be very, very strict about it. That helped me so much.
Yeah.
I didn't like the game until that happened. Really. I mean, and then finally it was like, okay.
Because I'm
actually enjoying this. I caught myself. I was like, I'm having a great time.
Yeah, I noticed that. You noticed your demeanor changed. You were starting to think about cards. The thing I would say in conclusion is that I will definitely say that this game is worth it. Right? It's worth 10 games of your time. No matter if you end up liking it or not, I think you'll find it.
Yeah, it's definitely an enjoyable game. And if you haven't already locked in your core sets, of course, you can do that through us. We're actually the Sakura token.
Yeah, and it's worth noting. We got to be, it's tough because we love games and trying to be as objective as possible, but it's worth noting we're selling this game. So you can be very skeptical of our opinion on this. That's totally fair to do. I mean, all we can say is we're very serious with all the things that we say, but there's no proving that, I guess. So we do have a financial incentive to sell the game, so that's worth noting.
Yeah, full disclosure, that money is going to the clothes that we're wearing.
Very literally with you. Both of you, actually, that's good stuff.
Excellent. All right, we're going to move on to questions. You can use the hashtag AskCovenant to have us answer your questions right here on the show. So we asked last week, we had Alex Davion, he's the designer of Star Wars Legion, and he asked the question, actually, what would people like to see in the game? And we got a lot of awesome responses, but Hothrebel86 on YouTube said, Alex Davey, please make these squads. Black Sun with Prince, I always say it wrong, Shizor, Jabba with Weakways and Bounty Hunters, Smugglers Alliance with Talon Card, Mara Jade, Han Solo, Dash Red, Red.
Sounds awesome, right? I can see all that on the board.
Yeah, I'm hopeful to go.
I liked how they treated Jabba in Imperial Assault. I would love to see him, just like a boss, go do things for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of just tons of places they can go with, particularly Clone Wars era and all the different conflicts. Even Episode 7, I would be excited First Order and Resistance. We also had another answer to the same thing. Alan Jones on YouTube, frequent answerer. Appreciate that, Alan. I want to see the various forms of Jedi combat stances used. Flesh out why X Jedi models does X and does not have...
Do not have all the Jedi be the same.
So, why is Mace Windu different than...
Let me go on record, as I have before, as saying that I hate Jedi.
Yeah.
Because of this very last sentence, this very last couple words. Not all Jedi have to be the same. And a lot of people that grew up in the Jedi Academy era of video games love it. They think it's great. I'm going to flip around. I'm going to do some lightsaber throws. I just don't like it. And so if you could have Jedi that actually feel like different Jedi, that would be fantastic for me.
So you may be interested. Some of the best Star Wars content is the Clone Wars, which is the
new cartoon.
Worth noting, a lot of answers to this question reference Clone Wars material.
It's built for
Very
this.
excited about it.
Because
Battle droids.
Yeah, that was what was going on. That was the Clone Wars.
And all the time, the commander of like a clone trooper platoon would be a Jedi and their apprentice. And each of those has a different flavor. So like it's Anakin and Ahsoka with their group, eventually the 501st, which is Vader Stormtroopers. Oops. And then you have like it's just cool because they're very different.
That's cool.
Different styles of war, right? Anakin's very aggressive and risk taking, and so that's how his troops roll.
Yeah.
And then versus over here, the conservative, like Obi-Wan, is very like defensive, and it's anyways.
And I will say, I think the system is actually set up in a pretty cool way to do that. You can have Jedi powers that are the same across many Jedi, but then ultimately the base stats are going to. I think it could be cool.
Yeah,
But I would love to see that. I would love to see different Jedi, different Sith, and not just all like flippy.
The same
saber
flippity
throwy
floppity. Yeah, like Yoda with that one lightsaber. Anyways, Michael on YouTube, we're going to get to an actual question here. Steven, calling you out. I have a question for you.
Hey.
Does L5R offer you the same immersive gameplay and strategy as Netrunner? I can hear your detailed enthusiasm when listening to your Netrunner match commentaries. Do you feel like the revised core set of Netrunner can earn your trust to re-enter that game? Thank you. Couple questions.
Must have been a fresh question. Came hot off the presses. All right. Does it offer the same immersive gameplay? No. It's not the same at all, actually. It's entirely different. It is immersive, and there is a lot of strategy, but it is nothing like playing Netrunner for me. The risk-taking element, like I said, the agency of the decision-making, how you structure your turn to accomplish various objectives, just the sense of being in control of the situation, and always having that immediate burst of excitement whenever points are scored. So all of these things are exclusive to Netrunner for me. Like you said with Spags, I think that Netrunner and in the same degree Destiny, this is just my style of game. It's also why I like abstract games. It's why I'm a freedom-obsessed individual. Like this is just, of course, this is the thing that's going to appeal to me. So I do find L5R very immersive. I find the gameplay very rewarding and interesting, but in an entirely different category of my brain. To answer that question. And then do you feel like the revised core set of Netrunner can earn your trust to re-enter the game? 100%. The one thing that I really want at this point is the future. I want to see how does this work into a more fleshed out strategy for how this never is needed again. Whether that's more pick and choosy style tournament formats where you have 2 cycles in a deluxe, or if it's we're going to rotate 4 cycles out next period rather than 2. I still think that the card pool needs to be smaller. I think we need a way to get new players into this game much easier. A revised core set actually does nothing for new players. So we need that to happen, and I would be super amped for the game. For my own personal interest, I've still got all my cards, so yeah.
I'm ready.
Are you kidding
I'm
me?
really ready.
Cut all the things that I used to run, and let's try again.
It's a whole new game.
Yeah.
It really is a whole new
Really
game.
amped about it, yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for listening. Again, you can use the hashtag AskCovenant. We'll answer your questions right here on the show. And now we'd like to ask you a question to leave in the comments below. I'm curious, what is the number one thing that keeps you from getting a game on the table? Thanks again for watching, and until next time, keep playing.